In many places, the West is afire. As drought continues, temperatures rise, species vanish, forest clear-cut. The work for many is lost, as is infrastructure, lives endangered, topsoil eroded, ecosystems simplified. These altogether become a serious contribution to the sixth mass extinction, which now is upon us. The West was harvested from a monocultural perspective. The waste profound and pervasive. The capacity to regenerate impaired. Erosion becomes a norm. A topsoil debt of about 6 inches across millions of acres. Biodiversity loss is incalculable. We dismissed the first peoples and their knowledge of place. We consumed the forest and the meadowlands. We forgot to give back. Now the West covers 11 states. The West is a physical presence of 1.3 million square miles. The West is not small, taking up about a third of the United States, occupied by 72 million people. Within this terrain are 160 million, now fire-endangered acres of forest. Mapping the forest reveals dimensions that fires would take and are taking. For instance, in 2015 in California, over 6,000 fires consumed hundreds of thousands of acres, the worst fire year in recorded history, with 2016 even hotter. A wave front of heat moving through the West, an invitation to crown fire. The trees return after clearing or crown fire, thin, crowded, very close. Density combined with drought invites fire. Imagine a response to these 160 million acres of forests, some intact, but many overcrowded and stressed, where over the long run, by design, catastrophe can be flipped into opportunity. The Sage Hen Project. The 8,000-acre Sage Hen Project, designed by people at the UC Berkeley Sage Hen Field Station, is deceptively simple. An amazing agreement is discovered between sometimes opposing groups, like the U.S. Forest Service, Sierra Forest Legacy, Sierra Pacific Industries, Sierra Nevada Conservancy. Through 10 years of experimentation, the Sage Hen Group has discovered that overgrown fire-endangered forest, when thinned to 40 to 60 trees per acre, in groupings dispersed variously according to the needs of the topology, the ground plane ecosystem emerges as fire tolerant, and catastrophic fire disappears. And the ground plane is made productive for biodiversity by the work of many.
including a force majeure group art science experiment in place at Sage Hen to discover local resilient plant ensembles that can move into the landscape as existing growth dies back from temperature rise.
When the risks of catastrophic fire disappears and ground fires self-extinguish, then the ecosystem is transformed into an open canopy forest, with meadowlands randomly appearing, and carbon is sequestered, wood products abundant. Then the act of harvesting trees both nourishes the ecosystem, providing renewable material that revitalizes the economy, simultaneously storing massive amounts of carbon in the built environment. Excess growth is thinned by hand at an average of $1,000 an acre. Excess growth is also cleared by machines at about $650 per acre. After thinning before first growth, the ground cover returns, rich and resilient. And managed fire benefits the whole. Chipping continues acre by acre. The result of all the thinning is turned into building materials. Turning into profit twice, becoming both building material and carbon credits. If 1 cubic meter of wood in a building collectively sequesters 1 ton of CO2, then one 20-story wood building will act as a carbon sink for 3,100 tons of CO2, and 1,200 tons of CO2 emitted in construction of 20-story concrete buildings is prevented. Then a net difference of 4,300 tons of CO2 results. Scaling up. The reasons for extending the Sage Hen project over the fire-endangered western forests and others like it are compelling. The multiplier effect is profound. If large-scale building with wood is developed city by city, creating thousands of local jobs and businesses, then gigatons of CO2 are retained, reducing greenhouse gases at close to planetary scale. A grand synthesis needs to be designed and put on the ground. Many parts are in place: industry, knowledge, science, with the exception of a viable market, yet all are separate, each happening in a different place. We propose a new category entitled Whole System Site, where a grand synthesis can occur. A guiding metaphor appears. Assisting adaptation is collaboration with nature. A whole system site, the concept. Such a site, 20,000 acres or much larger, with a scientific community ensuring the health of the forest, its ground plane, and all dependent species. Twinned with the ecological imperative are production, manufacturing, and distribution facilities for forest products. And it is clear to all participants that all aspects of this work contribute to the continuing of the whole system site, while conferring benefit on those who work there. And let us remember, before second settlement, redundancy and diversity were the norm, with millions of square acres as the field of play. And let us remember, the forest floor acted as a carbon sink. And let us remember, the forest floor was habitat for many. And let us remember, the waters were abundant, but not everywhere. And let us remember, the meadow life was abundant as well. In the largest sense, taking responsibility at this scale, which finally reaches whole system status, is imperative, as it is the only way to virtually eliminate the threat of catastrophic fires, to reduce greenhouse gases in large amounts, reducing the intensity of the global warming curve while increasing biodiversity and the availability of water, and mediating at the million square mile scale the effects of a sixth mass extinction, which is now upon us. Confronting a $1.5 billion economic irrationality in California fire control. For instance, 15 million acres in California alone are at risk for catastrophic fire at a $1.5 billion a year containment cost. If 1 million acres of overgrown forest were thinned yearly at an average cost of $1,000 per acre and an annual cost of $1 billion, then we're looking at $1 billion allocated annually for 15 years. Fire risk is reduced by 7% each year, mostly eliminating catastrophic fire in California, co-equally reducing the cost of firefighting. Then these lands become, over the long term, ecologically sustainable, adapting to global warming as it happens, creating jobs, often in small industry, often for the indigenous people who have historic knowledge in assisting the forests to continue.